Every character in Smash has 3 taunts, and sometimes 4 taunts. And those taunts gotta come from somewhere, and so in this video we are looking at every character's taunts in Super Smash Bros. Mario has the same taunt in Smash 64, Melee, Brawl, and Smash 4, which is his Grow taunt. Now this is a reference to Mario gaining a Super Shroom and growing in size in the classic Super Mario Bros. Games. The pose he stands in during this taunt also mimics the pose of his 2D sprite, with both arms to the side. For his side taunt in both Brawl and Smash 4, Mario removes his hat and does a sort of spin with it, which is a common pose in many of the Mario games, usually at the end of a level or completing a mission. But the earliest reference to this is probably in Super Mario 64, when Mario returns to Peach's castle after successfully collecting a star. Mario's down taunt in Brawl, Smash 4, and Ultimate has him twirl around in the air while facing the camera. This animation is a 3D replica of Mario's death animation from the Donkey Kong arcade game. In Ultimate, Mario's up taunt is no longer the big boy animation. Instead, he hits a thumbs up pose while facing the camera, which is similar to various art that he's had done by Nintendo. And with the introduction of Cappy in Mario Odyssey, Mario's side taunt has also changed, but in essence it has the same concept involved. Mario now throws his hat, Cappy's eyes appear, and then he catches it and puts it back on. And this is obviously based on the new mechanic that Mario has in Odyssey. Unfortunately, none of Donkey Kong's taunts really seem to come from anything. His up taunt and his side taunts are kind of just basic monkey and gorilla behavior, and his down taunt, which he's had since Smash 64, just kind of speaks for itself. In Smash 64, Link hits a pose, popping one foot in the air and readying his sword to attack. This pose could be very similar to the pose that he does in Zelda 2 Adventure of Link, which he does right after hitting an enemy with his sword. In Melee, this taunt was changed. Link now puts his sword and shield away and brushes his hair back. Not really a reference, he's just kind of fixing his hair and admiring how pretty he is. In Brawl and Smash 4, Link's 64 taunt returns as his down taunt. Link's up taunt is taken from the victory animation from Twilight Princess, which is the game that this iteration of Link comes from. Link does this whenever a boss is defeated or he learns a new hidden skill. And side taunt has Link summon Navi, who flies around a bit while Link admires her before she returns to his pocket. Now this kind of breaks some rules because Twilight Princess Link has never really officially interacted with Navi. But I suppose this could be a reference to the Wii version of Twilight Princess where the cursor was made to be Navi. But this isn't exactly Link and Navi interacting. I mean, story-wise, the fairy never comes up. It's just sort of a Zelda way to implement a cursor into the game. All of Link's Brawl taunts stay the same in Smash 4 as well, but in Ultimate, he has one change. His side taunt now has a new animation where Link holds the Master Sword out in front of him and the Master Sword glows blue like a charge up. This animation comes from one of the recovered memories that Link collects in The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Throughout all of the Smash games, none of Samus's taunts really have any kind of a reference. She's sort of just aiming her arm cannon or saluting, but she never really does anything specific to a game or reference that I can find. The exception is sort of, I guess, her side taunt where her arm cannon goes into its zero laser formation, but even then that's not really a reference to anything, it's kind of just one of the configurations that her arm cannon takes. If anything, it's just a reference to her final smash. And unfortunately, Yoshi really doesn't have any references either. He'll wave to the camera and say Yoshi, or he'll act like a dog and chase his tail, but other than that, there's really nothing that he's done in a game that could be pointed back to Smash. In Smash 64, Melee, and Brawl, Kirby faces the camera and says hi. Now this isn't really a specific reference to anything, but it kind of just matches Kirby's overall behavior. He's very much the kind of character who would wave to the camera and say hi. In Brawl, of course, he gets 2 more. The first is Up Taunt, which is a short portion of his victory dance from various Kirby games. The full thing would obviously be way too long to be a taunt unless you could cancel it like Bayonetta's, but Kirby only does a short part of it in Smash. Kirby's side taunt sees him spin around and strike a pose. While this is another typical Kirbyism, this is actually very similar to the animation that Kirby does when he's selected as a fighter in the original Super Smash Bros. His taunts from Brawl stay the same in Smash 4, and largely also stay the same in Ultimate with one exception. His up taunt no longer has the dance portion with it in Ultimate. He kind of just poses and then a little star pops out and then it's over. It's a very, very quick taunt. And in my opinion, it is likely because they wanted a really quick taunt that you could use to get rid of one of your Kirby hats if you needed to in a pinch. In Smash 64, Fox does a pretty generic pose where he crosses his arms and looks up at the sky. I couldn't really find any reference that this matches. The closest I could find is this art from the original Star Fox, which kind of has the same energy as this taunt, but the pose itself is very different. In Melee, this taunt was changed to be a literal taunt where Fox taunts his opponent and gestures at him while saying, "Come on." Again, there isn't really a reference here. Brawl keeps this Melee taunt and also adds 2 others. The first is his up taunt where he says, "Here I come," while charging up his Firefox move. And for his side taunt, he tosses his blaster in the air, catches it, and puts it back. These stay the same in Smash 4 and in Ultimate, although Ultimate has him say slightly different voice lines, with "Let's go" for the up taunt and "Come at me" for the down taunt. Pikachu's Smash 64 taunt has actually lasted all the way to Ultimate. It's had different animations and slightly different variations, but for the most part, it's the same. Pikachu faces the camera, will wave, and say "Pika Pika." This isn't really a reference to anything specific, but Pikachu does look at the camera and say his name a ton in different media for the Pokemon Company, being the mascot for the entire thing. Pikachu's additional taunts from Brawl also remain consistent all the way to Ultimate. Pikachu charges up with electricity for his up taunt, which is usually the first half of using Thunderbolt or Thunder in the anime. His down taunt has him roll and curl around on the floor. Not really a reference to anything, but man, that is adorable. Luigi is another case where his 64 taunt makes it all the way to Ultimate. He sort of half shrugs while putting his hands behind his back and very shyly kicks the ground. This doesn't really have any kind of a reference to it, but mostly just comes from Luigi being the more timid and shy of the Mario brothers, while also being overshadowed by Mario, who gets all the cool adventures. In Brawl, Luigi's up taunt has him doing a variety of poses in a very quick succession. And while these poses all seem pretty generic, all but one of these can actually be linked to a pose that Luigi has done in the past. First, he flashes a peace sign or a V sign, and Luigi first used this when he gets a key in Luigi's mansion. Next, he does finger guns, which is just a standard cartoony pose, and the only one without a real reference. Third, he puts his finger to his mustache, a pose that he did on official artwork for Mario and Luigi Partners in Time. Next, he crouches down on the floor facing away from the player, which is the position that he takes when he gets a bogey in Mario Golf. And finally, he has a sort of shocked pose, which comes from Luigi's Mansion and the art done for that game. For his side taunt, Luigi kind of planks, which is something that's original to Smash. He kind of just falls flat forward and then pops back up. However, this was originally a victory pose he had in Melee before it was repurposed as a taunt. This is also what Luigi's render from Smash 4 is based on. Ness's Smash 64 taunt has survived all the way to Ultimate. His famous
Okay.
Now, I've seen people online say that this is based on the menu in Earthbound playing an OK clip whenever they hit OK on the menu, but personally, I'm pretty skeptical on that. It kinda seems like a stretch. In my opinion, it's simply a Smash original taunt that Sakurai thought would be cute. Moving to Brawl's expanded taunts, Ness's side taunt sees him holding out his baseball bat, and down taunt has him channel some PSI energy that he twirls around. Neither are really references to anything other than weapons or abilities that Ness can use in his home game. Like much of Captain Falcon's moveset, his famous
"Show me a moves"
isn't really a reference to anything from his game series, and it seems to be made up just for Smash. This is another taunt that has survived all the way from the original game to Ultimate. And in Brawl, he of course gets 2 more, which are ironically really close to Fox's. The first is up taunt, where he charges himself up with fire. Like Fox's is a reference to his Firefox move, Captain Falcon's is a reference to his Falcon Punch move. His side taunt makes him hold out a hand and gesture for the opponent to come forward, saying "come on." Ironically, this is also similar to one of Fox's taunts and his Smash original. These 2 new taunts from Brawl also made it all the way to Ultimate. And the final character, Jigglypuff. In Smash 64, Jigglypuff faces the camera, puffs up a bit, and says the only words she knows how to say. This taunt is maintained in Melee, but it gets a bit of an upgrade, where she will first twirl around and wink before puffing up and saying Jigglypuff. Next is her side taunt, where she twirls around and strikes a pose at the end. Now this is just speculation on my part, but it may be a reference to how similar Kirby and Jigglypuff are. Not only does Kirby have a very similar taunt to this one, but Jigglypuff also has a Kirby sleep hat as one of her costumes, and Jigglypuff was built off of Kirby in Smash 64. So it could just be a kind of meta reference to Jigglypuff and Kirby having very similar puffball designs. And her down taunt has her completely deflate and flatten out, falling to the ground. This comes from the fainting animations from the home console Pokemon games, first seen in Pokemon Stadium for the N64, but also being as recent as Pokemon Battle Revolution for the Wii. In Melee, Peach spins around, poses with her finger near her face, and says, "Sweet!" This is likely based on her victory animation from Super Mario RPG when you win a battle with Peach. She'll spin around, strike a peace sign, and wink at the player. While Smash has her hold up a finger rather than the peace sign, the rest is pretty spot on for this taunt. It stays with Peach all the way until Ultimate, now being moved to her down taunt. Also in Ultimate, a heart appears next to her face, which is just meant to fit her character more, as she has hearts a lot of other places in her moveset. The rest of Peach's taunts from Brawl and onward could very well all be Smash original, but loosely based off of other Peach material. For her up taunt, she pulls out her parasol and twirls it while saying, "Sweet." Peach is often depicted with her parasol, even being a part of her moveset, but specifically in Super Princess Peach, one of her idle animations has her spin parry the parasol in a very similar way. While Smash has not used parry at all for Peach in her moveset, it was at one point considered based on unused textures that are in the game, and so it's very likely that this animation was inspired by Super Princess Peach. And lastly is her side taunt, which has her dance back and forth with music notes around her, singing, This is most likely original to Smash and is intended to be the truest form of a taunt, as it has become infamous as one of the most disliked taunts in all of Super Smash Bros. Bowser really seems to have gotten the shaft with regards to his taunts, as they really aren't taken from any kind of real source material. Bowser's depiction in Smash is very much meant to emphasize the reptile or dinosaur part of him, much more than the cartoony side that's seen in the actual Mario series. Starting in Melee, Bowser throws his head back and roars, like you'd expect from a dinosaur or reptile type thing. He keeps this as his up taunt all through the series, though starting in Brawl, he also breathes out smoke, as though his fire breath just can't wait to burst out. His side taunt has him bite at the air 5 times, reduced down to 3 times in Ultimate. Again, not really anything that Bowser has specifically done, but it's just more of a reptile behavior. And lastly, he, for some reason, jumps on one foot and acts as though he's gonna fall over. For this one, I just don't have any idea. I don't know what this is referencing, if it's referencing anything at all, and at most, it's just very close to his teeter animation. But I really don't have any idea why this is in the game. The Ice Climber's taunt in Melee seems to be entirely Smash original. They both hold out their hammers as though they've successfully conquered a mountain, and a howl of wind plays behind them. Most likely, this just stems from how an actual mountaineer may behave, since the Ice Climbers may be the character in Smash with the least amount of source material to pull from. Their up taunt has them place their hammers down and jump in the air, which is a reference to their animation on the victory screen of Ice Climber, though of course missing the flag, and there's 2 of them instead of just 1. Their down taunt has them jump around in a circle, which could be a reference to their home game where the entire point is to jump up non-stop. But more likely, it's just a cute taunt designed to match the cute design of the Ice Climbers. Sheik unfortunately seems to be a little underwhelming with all of her taunts. In Melee, she pulls back and raises her hand to her face while exhaling. This taunt stays all the way until Ultimate as her down taunt, and it's pretty much exactly the same the entire history of Smash. In Brawl and onward, her up taunt has her pop up onto one hand for a handstand, and for her side taunt, she pulls out her chain and stretches it out. In Smash 4, Sheik's side B was changed to Burst Grenade rather than her previous chain, but the taunt ironically stays basically the same, with the only difference being a twang sound effect at the end. None of these taunts are particular references to anything. Smash's design of Sheik is really meant to emphasize her ninja attributes, and these taunts just fall in line with that kind of mindset, representing her agility and her precision as a ninja. Zelda's Melee taunt has her bring her hands together as if she were praying. Zelda has often done this pose throughout her different incarnations, and young Zelda from Ocarina of Time specifically does this during the game, so it could easily be a reference to that. However, this taunt changes in Brawl, and it stays in this new form all the way until Ultimate. Zelda still brings her hands together, but instead of praying, she takes it into her own hands and she summons a ball of fire. This is based on her side B, Din's Fire, which is one of the goddess's spells in Ocarina of Time. This taunt was also one of Zelda's victory poses in Melee, which was then repurposed to be this taunt in Brawl and beyond. Her up taunt in Brawl and Smash 4 has her reach for the sky with a little bit of a sparkle at the end of her fingertips. This doesn't really have much of a reference at all, other than the fact that Zelda is a magic user in Smash and in the wider Zelda franchise. In Ultimate, this is changed, although the general idea is pretty much the same. She has magic emitting from her hand, but rather than reaching to the sky, she sort of just waves it out in front of her and poses at the camera. And lastly is her down taunt, which has her waving in the direction that she is facing. I couldn't really find anything that linked this specifically to the Zelda series around Brawl's release, since that's where this taunt came from. I couldn't really find anything that was linked to the Zelda series specifically, so there definitely could be something that I just totally missed, or it could just be a Smash original. Dr. Mario is pretty well known for his taunts, but not really in a good way. He starts off strong with his original Melee taunt, where he tosses a pill up into the air and catches it. This could very likely be a reference to Dr. Mario, where Dr. Mario himself tosses you the pills that you line up in the game, though instead of tossing it to the player, he simply tosses it back to himself in Smash. In his big return in Smash 4, he gets two new taunts that may as well be idle animations just for how lackluster they are. First, his up taunt has him grind his shoe on the ground. Now this could be a reference to his animation in Dr. Mario where he taps his foot on the ground, but this sprite really doesn't seem to be grinding his foot in any way. And for his down taunt, he bumps his fist against his shoulder. Now this is something that I really couldn't find any kind of connection for. It really just seems like a basic animation that they gave him. Pichu debuted in Melee, and he is one of the rare cases where he actually has two taunts in a game where everyone else has one taunt. And it's all dependent on which direction he's facing. If he's facing to the left, he jumps up and down and says Pichu while looking towards the camera. If he's facing to the right, he rolls around on the ground while also saying Pichu. Both of these seem to take inspiration from Pikachu's behavior because both Pichu and Pikachu's taunts have the same energy to them. And it makes sense because Pichu is the pre-evolution of Pikachu. Pichu's right taunt may also be where Brawl Pikachu inherited its rolling around taunt from. In Ultimate, both of these left and right taunts are now split off into individual taunts, no longer based on which direction you're facing, but instead which taunt button you're pressing. And of course in Ultimate he gets a new third taunt which sees him charging up with electricity just like Pikachu, but then he falls backwards with spirals in his eyes. This is based on the fact that Pichu can often damage itself from its own electricity, as evidenced by the fact that all of its electric moves in Smash cause it to take on a bit of percent. Its eyes turning into spirals is a reference to the Pokemon anime, which often portrays a Pokemon fainting with the exact same style of eyes. Falco's taunts in general don't really have specific references to any game or scenario, but they have more to do with Falco's general design in Smash and in Star Fox as a whole. Falco is the coolest member of Team Star Fox, and his taunts are meant to reflect that. In Melee, he spins around and scoffs at the opponent. In the Japanese version, he does the same spin, but says one of two phrases. This taunt returns in Brawl and stays with Falco all the way until Ultimate, but the voice line is no longer exclusive to the Japanese version, as he now says this voice line in different languages in the international versions. Falco's up taunt has him play hacky sack with his reflector before catching it while saying piece of cake. While this taunt can be a callback to Falco kicking his reflector as part of his down special, both debuted in the exact same game, and they're likely just another way to differentiate Falco as the cool, flashy fighter. And lastly is his side taunt, where he holds out his arm and says a voice line. Unlike his other taunts, this taunt actually has a different voice line in each game. In Brawl, he says, "Don't try me." In Smash 4, he says, "Get some." And in Ultimate, he says, "Come on." In Melee, Marth swings his sword, raises it up, and says, "Minna, which roughly translates to "everyone watch over me," or "everyone please look at me." This doesn't specifically have any kind of a reference, though the end of the taunt does kind of look like the end of the critical hit animation from the original Famicom Fire Emblem. And the phrase that Marth says doesn't really have any reference, though it could potentially be based on Marth being the leader of his army. This taunt stays in pretty much all Smash games except in Ultimate, where the animation is cut short due to the game's overall faster-paced taunts. He also speaks English in the international release of Ultimate, saying, "Keep your eyes open," though he says the exact same phrase in the Japanese version. His up taunt in Brawl onwards has him pointing his sword to the sky with a sparkle on the tip. This is also based on his critical hit pose, but it more accurately matches the critical hit animation from Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon, a DS remake of the Famicom game. In Brawl and Smash 4, this taunt doesn't have a voice line with it, but in Ultimate, it does. He now says, "This is it!" And lastly, his side taunt from Brawl through Ultimate has him swing his sword briefly before placing it in his sheath. The actual animation of this taunt doesn't necessarily have a reference, but Marth has had official art done where his pose matches the very end of the taunt, so this could just be a 3D reimagining of this art. Young Link, being a growing boy, pulls out a bottle of Lon Lon milk and drinks the whole thing before wiping his face. While not necessarily a reference to a particular moment in the Zelda series, Lon Lon milk is a staple item in the Zelda series and first appeared in Ocarina of Time, Young Link's first game. Young Link drinks this down in one, but it's actually supposed to have 2 helpings, meaning that in Smash he should really be gaining 10 hearts back if we're following the real rules. This taunt is also the longest in all of Melee. Having a huge gap between games, Young Link returns in Ultimate and keeps this taunt, but it's now substantially shorter, with Young Link chugging it all at once rather than 3 big gulps. For his up taunt in Ultimate, Young Link raises the Kokiri sword into the air, which seems to be a Smash original. Because of Link's Breath of the Wild upgrade in Smash, Young Link has instead inherited his former side taunt. Navi flies around while Young Link admires her, and she then returns to his hat. However, unique to Young Link is the positioning of his hand on the fairy, which is a clever nod to this artwork done for Majora's Mask. While the fairy in Smash isn't the same fairy as the one in this art, the pose is definitely intentional. Ganondorf's first taunt is a sort of fusion of different aspects of his character from Ocarina of Time, with a bit of a Smash twist thrown in as well. He spins around sort of tucked into a ball, and then he stretches his limbs out quickly while laughing. In Ocarina of Time, the final fight with Ganondorf involves him hovering around, which is where the anti-gravity aspect of this taunt comes from. Whenever your window to attack him is over, he raises up and does a similar pose to the Melee taunt. Smash just seems to have added the spin to just give him a little bit more flair. This is yet another taunt that has survived from the beginning, becoming his up taunt in future games. Ganondorf's side taunt has him punch his fist with a pulse of dark energy. This seems to be a Smash original, and it's probably a reference to the Warlock punch and how he has all of that power inside of his one fist. And lastly is his down taunt, in which he pulls out his sword and admires it before putting it away. While not strictly a reference to anything, the actual sword matches the design of Ganondorf. For Brawl and Smash 4, Ganondorf is the Twilight Princess design, and so the sword he pulls out matches that game using the Sword of 6 Sages that was used to attempt to execute him. In Ultimate, he returns to his Ocarina of Time design, and while he's never specifically wielded a sword in that game, a tech demo at Space World 2000 shows Ganondorf in a sword battle using this exact sword. This also isn't the first time that this Space World sword was used in Smash, as it was also used for one of Ganondorf's victory poses back in Melee. Next up, we have Mewtwo's taunt, which has him spin around and laugh, with later versions having him slightly rise up in the air. I can't really find an exact reference to this. Mewtwo has plenty of animations where he rises up, but none of them really match the Smash taunt exactly. I'm more than willing to accept that there's an animation of his that does match this, I just wasn't able to find anything right now. His side taunt in both Smash 4 and Ultimate has him charge up with dark energy, which is a reference to his portrayal in the Pokemon anime, and specifically Pokemon the first movie. Lastly, Mewtwo strikes a pose at the screen and dark energy pops out of his hand. There is countless art of Mewtwo hitting basically this exact pose, so this taunt is really just a 3D representation of what this would be like. And then of course they add a little bit of dark psychic energy just for some extra fun. The pool noodle boy Roy himself leans back for his taunt, screaming "Eeeeeah!" with his hand outstretched. While the prepubescent shouting is unique to Smash, the actual pose that Roy hits is a 3D imagining of one of his sprites during the battle phase of Fire Emblem The Binding Blade. Though he didn't get sent an invite in Brawl, Roy returned in both Smash 4 and Ultimate, and in that time he grew up, bringing with him a much deeper voice. For his up taunt, Roy holds his sword up above his head, which is potentially a reference to a moment in his game where he receives the Binding Blade. And his side taunt is basically the same as his up taunt, but more around his waist than above his head. While this pose is pretty generic and is likely original to Smash, he shouts "I won't lose" while performing the taunt, which is one of the victory quotes that he used in Super Smash Bros. Melee. And lastly, we have Mr. Game & Watch. For his taunt in Melee, he simply rings a bell. The physical Game & Watch units had a basic alarm system built into its clock, and this is the sound that the alarm would make. In Brawl, he gets 2 additional taunts, one of which is exactly the same as Melee's, except instead of holding it to the side, he holds the bell above his head. This has the exact same reference, and it's literally just a different pose, but it is fun to spam them back and forth. His down taunt has him do a small jump, which is possibly a reference to any number of Game & Watch games where one of the action frames has him jumping. But this jump was short-lived, as in Smash 4 and Ultimate, it was changed to have him sit on the ground and puff out some air. This is taken directly from one of the frames done in the Game & Watch version of Mario Bros. Meta Knight was the first character that was added to Brawl, so obviously that's where we're gonna start. His up taunt has him twist up inside his cape before untwirling, breaking all sorts of laws of physics. This also serves as his entrance in Smash, but both are actually based on his exit animation in the Kirby series, which first appeared in Kirby's Adventure, but has had other appearances throughout the series. Meta Knight's side taunt has him twirl his sword around before pointing it forward and saying, "Fight me." This is a livelier version of the pose Meta Knight strikes at the beginning of several fights against him in the Kirby series, though it was most likely given the extra little flair thanks to the translation to 3D. His down taunt has him flap his wings in a rather menacing way. This is potentially another example of Smash taking a pre-existing animation and expanding on it with a more flexible medium. In Kirby Superstar, Kirby has a chase sequence where Meta Knight flies after him, and the animation at the beginning of this could be seen as the inspiration for his down taunt. Pit's design in Brawl is largely original, as his only games prior to this were an NES game and Game Boy game, with a few cameos here and there. So his overall attitude and demeanor in Smash are largely based on Sakurai's vision for the character, a vision that would eventually bring him to make a new entry in the Kid Icarus series after Brawl's release. Pit's up taunt has him spin his swords above his head and say, "The fight is on!" While largely original to Smash, the voice line could be a reference to his trophy in Melee, more specifically the flavor text, which questions whether Pit will ever fight again. Pit's side taunt shows him swinging his swords while saying, "You're not ready yet." This taunt is also used in two places for Brawl. First, Pit's reveal during the E3 trailer for Brawl has him hit this pose, and he also does it during a cutscene in the Subspace Emissary mode. Lastly, Pit's down taunt has him sort of rise up with his wings open. Not much of a reference other than to him being an angel and acting sort of angelically. And now, if you guys will indulge me really quickly, I am within shooting distance of 250,000 subscribers, which is just an insane number. So if you guys are not subscribed, please be sure to hit that subscribe button if you want to see more of this kind of content. And with that, let's move on to Zero Suit Samus. Zero Suit Samus became an extension of Samus as a character, but she had her own full moveset before eventually becoming her own fighter. As far as her taunts go, I'm really hesitant to say that I think that they are all Smash originals. Now, I'm not incredibly knowledgeable about the Metroid series, so I can definitely stand to be corrected, but based on my research, that is what I could find, that all of these are kind of just built for Smash specifically. The concepts behind every taunt either show off her Plasma Whip, which is one of her primary weapons in Metroid as well as in Smash, or they show off her agility and speed, something that's heavily expanded on in the Metroid manga, which is considered to be canon in the Metroid series. Following that, we have Wario, who is designed to play up the gross man archetype in his moveset and behavior. Up taunt has Wario laugh at the camera so hard that he seemingly unhinges his jaw and has to put it back in the right position. This taunt is likely Smash original and could probably be referring to how wide Wario can seem to open his mouth in his neutral special. Side taunt sees Wario shake his butt at the camera, likely meant to be a taunt in the literal definition of the word, as well as a reference to Wario's waft and his affinity for farts. Down taunt has him doing the W sign with his hands while saying, "Wah, wah, wah." Both the voice line and the hand pose are common things that Wario does as a sort of catchphrase / symbol that he uses for himself. But Wario is also unique in that he has a fourth taunt. If he is actively using his side special, the bike, and presses any taunt button, Wario will effectively do his down taunt in a special pose while still operating the bike. The only difference besides the bike from this and his actual down taunt is that at the end he picks his nose very briefly. For all three of Snake's taunts in both Brawl and Ultimate, he hides inside of a cardboard box. This is a reference to his home series where you can hide in or under a box as a means of avoiding detection from enemies. While it is a little sad that all three of his taunts are the same thing, there is a slight difference in each, and I do mean slight, and it's all to do with timing. Up taunt is fastest, side taunt is average, and down taunt is slowest. Next, let's tackle the newest Fire Emblem rep to Brawl, back when there were 3 total in Smash and only 2 actually in the game. Let's look at Ike. First up is Ike's up taunt, where he holds his sword in front of him and kind of charges up, I guess? This could be a Smash original, or a reference to Ike's side B, where he charges up to launch forward. Next is his side taunt, where he sort of readies up his sword behind him. This comes directly from Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn, as Ike has the exact same pose as his battle start animation. Ike's down taunt is a bit ambiguous, but it could come from a couple of places. First, it could be pulled from his battle start animation in Radiant Dawn as well, where he begins the fight with the sword already in the ground. It's kind of the opposite, but it's still potentially inspired by this. It could also be taken from this very depressing scene. But now let's look at the Pokemon trainer and their Pokemon. Because Pokemon was so strictly sprite-based for so long, a lot of their behavior comes from their portrayal in the anime rather than any specific point in the core series of games. In Brawl, the Pokemon trainer will taunt alongside the Pokemon. However, these are fairly generic, with the trainer simply pointing his arm in the same direction as the taunt button that was pressed. Smash Ultimate keeps both the up and side taunt animations for the trainer, making them slightly more lively, but mostly the same. The down taunt, however, is changed from the stomp to more of a victory pose. The female trainer has effectively the same poses as the male trainer, they're just tailored more to her personality. She raises her Pokeball for her up taunt, does a similar fist pump with her hand for her side taunt, and she jumps up with her hand in the air for her down taunt. But now let's move on to the actual Pokemon, starting with Squirtle. Squirtle's up taunt has him do a backflip and pose after he lands, which comes from his entrance and idle animation from Pokemon Stadium. It's just made a bit more brief for Smash. Next is his side taunt, which has Squirtle spin on his tail, which may have actually been inspired straight from the anime. May received a Squirtle and it eventually evolved into Wartortle, and it would love to stand on its tail, and so this may have been pulled straight from the anime. Lastly is Squirtle's down taunt, which may be inspired by either Withdraw or Rapid Spin from the anime, which Ash's Squirtle has done on several occasions. In Ultimate, all of these taunts are pretty much the same, they're just made a bit more expressive, as well as a little bit faster due to Ultimate doing this for every character across the board. But next is Ivysaur, who unlike Squirtle and Charizard doesn't really have a large role in the Pokemon anime, but its pre-evolution Bulbasaur did. For its up taunt, Ivysaur shakes its bulb and leaves, which is a more animated version of its entrance animation from Pokemon Stadium. Its side taunt sees him stand on his front legs and walk around before rolling over back on all fours, a Smash original. And its down taunt has it pull out its vines and spin around. This could also be pulled from the Pokemon anime, as Pokemon like Bulbasaur have been shown to play games with other Pokemon using their Vine Whip vines. And just like Squirtle, all of these are retained in Ultimate and they're simply made a bit more lively. Charizard's personality in Smash is also largely designed around the anime, and of course the most screen time we get for this Pokemon is Ash's Charizard. His up taunt has him face the screen and flap his wings while roaring, which is again based on his entrance animation from Pokemon Stadium. His side taunt has him face the screen while extending his wings outward. Now this is a pretty generic Charizard pose, but it's one that he has definitely done in the anime. Lastly, Charizard stomps the ground for his down taunt. Several times in the anime, he's seen stomping the ground from different angles as a means of conveying how big he truly is. And as a result, this taunt could very well be a reference to that. In Smash 4, despite Charizard becoming a standalone character, his taunts remained unchanged. But that does not apply for Ultimate, which has some severe changes. In Ultimate, his up taunt has him stand up tall and puff his chest and wings out. Now this one really stumps me because it just seems out of character for Charizard. The best that I could come up with is that maybe it's an in-game reference to Ridley's taunt that's very similar. I'm honestly not sure, I just don't know what this one could be about, so if you guys have any ideas, I'd love to hear them down in the comments. His side taunt has him quickly fly on the spot and land with a stomp and a roar. I want to say this taunt was inspired less by the main Pokemon anime and more from the Charizard that's seen in Pokemon Origins. That one was designed to just be tougher and scarier, and this taunt really feels like it may have had that special series in mind. And lastly is his down taunt, which for some reason is just his old up taunt moved to a different button. But like the other old taunts, this one has been revamped, and while the reference to Pokemon Stadium still remains, it's been made much more menacing, with the camera shaking and the shockwaves coming out of his mouth when he roars. Next, let's move on to the second Donkey Kong rep, Diddy Kong. Yes, it took that long to get even a second Donkey Kong rep. For Diddy Kong's up taunt, he throws his cap up into the air and then catches it back on his head. This is a reference to Donkey Kong Country. Upon completion of a bonus room or the defeat of a boss, Diddy Kong will celebrate using a similar dance, throwing his hat in the air, though he won't catch it on his head, therefore making Brawl Diddy that much cooler. Next is Diddy's side taunt, where he holds his hands out in this weird pose while making this awful shrieking noise. I can only guess that this is a Smash original, meant to have Diddy sort of strike a fighting pose, but do it in a very monkey-like way. Finally is Diddy Kong's down taunt, which has him dance while clapping his hands over his head. I couldn't find an exact reference to this, so it could just be another monkey-like behavior, but this could also be inspired by the victory dance that Diddy Kong does on the overworld of Donkey Kong Country. It definitely has a similar energy, and Smash may have just built upon it because they had more than 10 pixels total to work with. Next is Lucas, the second rep from the Earthbound/Mother series. For his up taunt, Lucas falls over on his butt and then gets up. This isn't exactly taken from anything specific, though Lucas does fall over a fair few times during the events of Mother 3. This is more likely to be inspired by the timid or clumsy personality that Smash gives to Lucas, which in turn is inspired by the beginning of Mother 3, where Lucas has that same personality, but then through the events of Mother 3, he gains all sorts of confidence and his personality changes. For his side taunt, Lucas pulls out the rope snake and shrugs at it before putting it away. This is entirely original to Smash, because while the rope snake is a part of Mother 3, it actually belongs to Duster, and Lucas himself never uses it. Down taunt has Lucas channel some PSI energy using his fingers, followed by a downward swing of the hand. This is Smash original, and it's pretty generic. It's basically just giving Lucas a taunt that shows off his psychic abilities, just like Ness has. Next, we have the hedgehog who almost didn't make it into Brawl. It's Sonic. Sonic's up taunt seems to be semi-original. The flip done at the beginning doesn't really have any origin, but the pose that Sonic hits at the end is one of his trademark poses, which originates from concept art for the first Sonic Adventure game. Next is his side taunt, where he runs in place and yells out the now iconic, "You're too slow!" The actual motion is based on the Super Peel Out, which is a special move that first originated in Sonic CD. The voice line is original to Smash though, and it's a reference to simply how fast and cocky Sonic can be. However, Smash 4 and Ultimate changed this voice line to instead be Sonic Speed! And finally, for his down taunt, Sonic does a breakdance while saying, "Come on, step it up!" And in Smash 4 and Ultimate, this is shortened to simply be, "Come on!" Like the previous taunt, the voice line is a Smash original, but the dance is a bit tricky. It's very likely that this is original to Smash, but Sonic Generations does use this same animation for one of Sonic's victory screens. But the interesting thing is that Sonic Generations didn't begin development until 2009, which was a full year after Brawl actually released. So it's very possible that the Sonic Generations team liked this animation and they borrowed it from Smash. But it's also possible that Sega provided the Brawl team with a potential animation, and that's why we see it in Smash as well as in Sonic Generations. But that's really all speculation on my part. I really couldn't find any information that points one way or the other. All of King Dedede's taunts are original to Smash. For his up and side taunts, King Dedede poses with his hammer in a menacing way. His down taunt, however, shows off his more playful side, where he does a dance in a circle while patting his big ol' belly. These taunts capture the different sides of King Dedede's personality, both as a villain and as an ally, rather than referencing anything specific from the Kirby games. But next, let's move to Mr. Spaceman himself, Olimar. Oh yeah, and Alf. For his up taunt, Olimar jumps up and down a few times. This could have been inspired by Olimar's animation for when he collects a new part for the SS Dolphin in the first Pikmin game, though the taunt in Smash is much more animated and lively than in his home game. Side taunt sees Olimar roll around on the ground before getting back up, which could be a reference to the animation where Olimar lays down and is carried back to the onions by the Pikmin. And down taunt has Olimar swing his hips around, which is a Smash original. Olimar and Alf both have pretty basic character designs, so the number of animations that can be done are kind of limited. But from that, let's move on to the newest Pokemon to be seen generation-wise in Super Smash Bros., Lucario. Lucario's up taunt has him sort of flex upward and growl while blue aura surrounds him. Aura is sort of Lucario's whole gimmick. It's a spiritual energy that all living things give off, and Lucario himself can detect and fight using it. It's also the source of most of his special moves, so a taunt where he charges it up just kinda makes sense for Smash, but it doesn't really have any kind of a specific reference that I could find. Likewise, Lucario's side taunt doesn't really have its own reference either, but it's rather another pose that simply utilizes Lucario's aura. Down taunt has Lucario ready up into a fighting stance, which could be a possible reference to Lucario being a fighting type, despite aura seeming very psychic. That never really made much sense to me. We're winding down here real quick, we've got the last 3. Next is Rob. Rob's up taunt has him spin his head and arms around. This is a similar animation to the one that he has in Mario Kart DS, where he again was a very surprising character on the roster. Side taunt sees Rob face the camera and flash his laser eyes, a reference to his neutral special, Robo Beam. But both this move and the taunt are likely references to the optical sensors that are designed as Rob's eyes on the actual toy. It would receive light signals in order to execute different functions for Rob. Down taunt is based on the actual Rob peripheral's movements, though they're vastly sped up, as the real thing was, slow would probably be an understatement. But now let's move on to the newest Link in the Super Smash Bros. Franchise, Toon Link, who was a representative of both Wind Waker and the then recently released Phantom Hourglass. For up taunt, Toon Link conducts using the Wind Waker and strikes a pose. In the game Wind Waker, Toon Link uses the baton to perform all sorts of actions, but primarily to control the direction of the wind. At the end of the taunt, a little jingle plays, which is the same jingle that plays in Wind Waker after the successful conducting of a song. Unfortunately, the movements that he does in Smash don't actually match any song from the Wind Waker, but, it's still a cute little taunt. Side taunt has Link just kinda stare around a little bit. Now this could be a reference to Wind Waker, where Toon Link would typically stare around at important landmarks or items. But in Smash 4 and then in Ultimate, this taunt receives an upgrade where Toon Link is staring around still, but it's actually at a fairy that's flying around. The design for this fairy is pulled straight from Wind Waker, just like Toon Link is. And as for the origin of the taunt, it could have easily been made as a parallel to the classic Link side taunt, just to match. And finally is Down Taunt, which has Toon Link furiously swing his sword before tiring himself out. Now this specific animation is likely a Smash original, but it does match the energy of the Hurricane Spin, which is an upgraded version of the spin attack in Wind Waker. With that move, Toon Link will spin around constantly for quite a while, and then he will be rendered immobile because he's tuckered out from all that spinning. And finally, we have the last character from Brawl, Wolf O'Donnell. Wolf's up taunt has him arch his head back and howl because, well, he's a wolf. For side taunt, Wolf does a triple kick while saying,
"What's the matter, scared?"
This is actually a Smash original, and it's meant to match Wolf's cocky attitude. In Smash Ultimate, the general speed of taunts has been sped up, and as the animation from Brawl is quite long, it's been adjusted to be a simple hand animation. On top of this, the voice line from Brawl has been changed to have Wolf simply say,
"Are you scared?"
And similarly to up taunt, down taunt has Wolf get low to the ground and snarl, another behavior that is distinctly wolfish. Villager was the first character announced for Smash 4 as a part of the reveal trailer for the game. Villager's up taunt could be a Smash original, but it's possibly based on any of the happy emotions or reactions from the Animal Crossing series. They just made it a bit more animated and a bit longer to fit well as a taunt. Side taunt is the Shrunk Funk Shuffle. The player can learn emotions from Dr. Shrunk in Animal Crossing New Leaf and Happy Home Designer, and after learning every emotion, will receive the Shrunk Funk Shuffle as the final one. Down taunt is also Smash original, but it could be a reference to either Villager's Down Special, which has him grow a tree and chop it down, or the frequency at which the player can pick up sticks while playing Animal Crossing, as they are the most common item. Next up is Mega Man, the second character revealed pretty much right after Villager. Mega Man's up taunt has him ready his arm cannon and strike a pose. Now I feel like I've seen this somewhere before, but I just couldn't find anything on it, so I'm inclined to say that it's Smash original, but I could very easily be wrong. It could be a reference to a piece of art or an actual pose that he hits in a game. I just couldn't find anything. The same can be said about his side taunt. I'm inclined to say that it's Smash original, but I could very easily be wrong. There's just so much Mega Man content out there. But down taunt has an exact reference, and that is his entrance and exit animation in the Mega Man games. This usually happens when he enters a stage for the very first time or leaves it right after defeating the Robot Master, and it also serves as his entrance for the match in Super Smash Bros. Next up is Wii Fit Trainer. Like a lot of Wii Fit Trainer's moves, the taunts are based on actual things that you do during exercising. Up taunt has her stretch in the half moon pose, side taunt is a cross-body shoulder stretch, and down taunt sees her sit down and stretch out her legs. During these taunts, voice clips play where they're explaining exactly what they are doing just like they would in Wii Fit. Next up is Rosalina and Luma, who was a shoo-in for Smash because she is simply one of the most popular characters for the Mario series in recent memory. Up taunt has both Rosalina and Luma spinning on their axes, which is similar to how planets rotate out in outer space, or more closely to Rosalina, the way her Comet Observatory will also tend to spin. But both side taunt and down taunt are certainly Smash originals. They both involve her wand in some way, which is something that she always has on her. You know that she always keeps that dang on her. Next, let's move on to Little Mac, who is the first character ever to get upgraded from Assist Trophy to Fighter. Little Mac's up taunt seems to be Smash original, but there is the chance that it could be a reference to Little Mac's punch animations, just seen from the other side. He's not exactly punching with force during the taunt, and the reference would be very loose at best, but it's still possible. Side taunt is a reference to real-life boxing, with Little Mac tightening up the tape on his boxing gloves. Tape is used in real-life boxing as a means to prevent injury to the hands or wrists, so it would make sense that Little Mac has these around his hands and wrists. And lastly, Little Mac does a flurry of punches for his down taunt. He does something similar in his Punch-Out for Wii victory animation, but it's more likely that it's just original. I mean, it is just punching. Next, let's move on to the Pokemon rep for Smash 4, Greninja. Greninja's up taunt has him strike an upward pose. This pose comes from one of his attack animations in the mainline Pokemon games, starting with X and Y. Side taunt has him shake his head from side to side, and as a result has his tongue flail everywhere with saliva flying off. This is Smash original, and it's just meant to emphasize his giant, disgusting tongue. Down taunt has Greninja strike a pose with two water spouts spraying out of his hands. I don't think this is a reference to anything, but it's super cool and it can actually be used offensively very, very rarely. Now I'm gonna go ahead and save us all some headache here and say that almost all of the Mii Fighters taunts are completely original to the game, as the fighters themselves are completely original. There are, however, two exceptions. The first is Sword Fighter's down taunt, which is pretty much just Link's down taunt. And the second is Mii Gunner's up taunt, which is just taken from Samus's down taunt. Everything else is brand new and fairly generic. Next is Palutena, and I'm going to hazard a guess that all of hers are original. They're all simply meant to emphasize how graceful and angelic she is, but they aren't specific references to anything. Because Dark Pit debuted in Smash 4, I'm going to talk about his taunts now since we're on the topic of Kid Icarus. Both his up and down taunt seem to be Smash originals, with him literally taunting his opponent, as you would expect from Dark Pit. However, side taunt is very similar to his and Pit's neutral airs in Smash, which are references to the buzzsaw attacks that can be used in Kid Icarus Uprising. But when it comes to Kid Icarus, I am just not very knowledgeable, so for both Palutena and Dark Pit's taunts, I could very well be 100% wrong, so if I am, please let me know down in those comments. Oh boy, it's time for Pac-Man. Now this one is going to be a doozy. Pac-Man's up taunt is called the Namco Roulette, which has him summon a different sprite from a variety of Namco properties, likely because it would be quick and easy to license these because of how close Nintendo and Namco worked on Smash together. Smash for 3DS and Wii U both had console-exclusive sprites contained for this taunt, but Smash Ultimate consolidated them together into the full taunt, you could say, for Pac-Man. And so I'm going to be using the Ultimate footage for this reason. So here are all of the sprites in Pac-Man's up taunt and their references. Galaxip is the player's ship in Galaxian. Turn to Blue is the appearance that ghosts take on when Pac-Man eats a power pellet throughout the whole series. King is from the shooter game King and Balloon. The player's car from Rally X, a maze racer. The player's ship from Galaga. The player's ship in Bosconian, a free-roaming shooter. Puka, the common enemy in Dig Dug. Solvalu, the player's ship in the shooter Xevious. Andor Genesis, a mini-boss also from Xevious. Mappy, the main character from the platformer Mappy. Top Cup, a monster from the puzzle game Libble Rabble. Hypership, a secret fighter in Gaplus, the sequel to Galaga. Gil, the prince of the Tower of Juaga, a role-playing maze game. Clovis, the hero of the dungeon crawler Dragon Buster. Runner, the player sprite from platformer Metrocross, which interestingly runs on the same hardware as Pac-Land. Packet is a friendly alien from the shooter Baraduke. Red Baron is the player 1 character in the shooter Sky Kid. Valkyrie is the main character of the Famicom game Valkyrie no Densetsu. Donchan is the mascot of the Taiko no Tatsuken series, a series of drum-based rhythm games. Now those were all from Smash for 3DS and Wii U. Pac-Man on top of this gets 2 new ones in Smash Ultimate. Heihachi Mishima, the major antagonist of the Tekken fighting games, and the Prince of All Cosmos, the main character from the Katamari series. And that is the most complex taunt in all of Smash covered. Now quickly, let's look at his other 2 taunts. Side Taunt turns him into his classic pizza design from the original arcade release, going left and right before turning back to normal. Lastly is Down Taunt, where Pac-Man stares up at fairies while a jingle plays with music notes. The fairies that appear above his head are from Pac-Land, and the jingle that plays is an arrangement of the intermission theme from Pac-Man. Unfortunately, I could not find anything on Robin's taunts. They all kind of just look original. Now again, this is another series that I'm not entirely versed in, so if something is wrong and I am incorrect, please let me know down in those comments. Next, let's talk about Shulk from Xenoblade Chronicles. Shulk's up taunt has him strike a pose and hold a hand up while saying, "Now it's Shulk time." In Xenoblade Chronicles, Rain will often say, "Now it's rain time," so this is a reference to that quote, simply catered for Shulk. The animation is based on Shulk's animation while having a conversation. Side Taunt has Shulk grab the Monado on his back, do a fist bump, and say, "I'm really feeling it!" When Shulk's tension level increases in Xenoblade Chronicles, Shulk will say this line. Down Taunt has Shulk pose with a Monado and say, "This is the Monado's power!" which is one of the lines Shulk can say when he uses the Activate Monado talent art in Xenoblade. Next up, let's talk about Bowser Jr. Up Taunt has Jr. jump on the edge of the car and breathe a puff of fire, which is a Smash original. Side Taunt has Jr. twirl his hammer around. Bowser Jr. doesn't specifically use this hammer, but the Hammer Bros definitely do. However, on this taunt for each of the Koopalings, they will instead twirl their respective wands around, which originated in Super Mario Bros. 3. Lastly, Down Taunt has the character go into its wheel form and pop a sick donut, yeah! This animation is largely original, but the concept of the clown car becoming an actual car originates from the Mario Kart series, first in Mario Kart 7. Duck Hunt, having very little source material to go off of, has largely original taunts. Up Taunt is original, where the dog dances on his front legs, and the duck is for some reason pissed. Side Taunt is the classic chuckle for the dog, while the duck kinda just chills and quacks next to him. And Down Taunt has the 2 of them do a little dance together, which is another Smash original. Now we move on to Smash 4's DLC characters, which are far more cut and dry in terms of their taunts references. First we'll begin with Ryu, the first rep from Street Fighter. Ryu's up taunt has him tighten his headband up a bit, which is also a taunt found in Street Fighter 4. Likewise, his side taunt, where he gestures towards the opponent, is also taken from Street Fighter 4. Lastly is Down Taunt, where he slams his foot down while striking a fighting pose, which is instead a taunt found in Street Fighter 3. Yeah, I know, they've really changed that last one up on us. Next we have the ex-soldier Cloud, hailing from Final Fantasy VII. Cloud's up taunt has him spin his sword around before posing with it on his back, taken straight from his victory animation in Final Fantasy VII. Side taunt comes from the spellcasting animation, which is also from Final Fantasy VII. And then there's Down Taunt, where Cloud leans on the Buster Sword while scoffing at the opponent. This is more original than taken straight from a game, though it matches Cloud's attitude perfectly. Next up is Corrin, who comes from Fire Emblem Fates. Up taunt has Corrin strike an energetic pose while their head turns into its dragon form. This is taken from the critical hit animation when Corrin performs Dragon Fang in Fire Emblem Fates. Side taunt has Corrin swing their sword out in front of them, which is similar to Corrin's battle start animation, also from Fates. And down taunt has Corrin swing their sword over their head and strike it at the ground, which comes from female Corrin's victory pose. And the final character for Smash 4 is of course Bayonetta. The dance Bayonetta does for her up taunt is the long taunt that she can do in Bayonetta 2. Side taunt has Bayonetta spin around before pointing her guns out.
No do, dead you.
The quote she says while doing this is her dialogue from her short taunt while wielding Salamandra in Bayonetta 2. And finally, down taunt comes from the dance that Bayonetta does right before fighting the very first Joy in Bayonetta 1. So first off is her up taunt, which is a 3D imagining of the pose that she strikes in her official art for Fire Emblem Awakening. This pose is also the source for her render that is used in Smash for 3DS and Wii U. Her side taunt has her sheath her sword while saying,
I cannot lose.
This is probably Smash original, or perhaps it's a reference to Marth's side taunt, which is incredibly similar, and by extension is a reference to Lucina being Marth's clone. And lastly is down taunt, which has her put on a mask briefly before taking it off. This mask helps serve a major plot point in Fire Emblem Awakening, where Lucina first appears as a masked swordsman named Marth before revealing her true identity. Inkling's up taunt and down taunt both come from Splatoon and Splatoon 2. During multiplayer battles, there are signals that players can use to communicate with their teammates. Up taunt is based on the come on or this way signal, while down taunt is based on the booyah signal. Side taunt, however, seems to be Smash original, with the Inkling firing their weapon in a literal taunting manner. Following Inkling is the big boy space pirate Ridley. Ridley's up taunt has him rapidly flap his wings while roaring, a simple reference to Ridley's ability to fly and previous portrayals of that. Side taunt has him spin around and end with a claw swipe, which is probably original to Smash. However, the pose Ridley hits at the end could potentially be derived from his render used for Smash Ultimate. It could all also largely be a reference to Ridley's side special. Lastly is down taunt, which has Ridley stand upright and tall before hunching back over. In an interview prior to Smash Ultimate's release, Sakurai said that this taunt was one of his favorites as it showed just how big Ridley truly is. So I honestly don't think it is a huge stretch to say that this down taunt may actually be leaning into the Ridley is too big meme, as we can see that they were totally okay with referencing it in his reveal trailer. Next up is He-Man, Simon Belmont from the Castlevania series. Starting off is Simon's up taunt, where he holds the vampire killer above his head, which seems to be a Smash original, which is simply just meant to be an epic pose. It also could have been designed to parallel Richter's up taunt, which we'll talk about specifically in a minute. Side taunt resembles a pose that a very different Simon Belmont strikes in Castlevania Judgment, the series' very first fighting game. And down taunt has Simon whip the vampire killer on the ground, referencing the opening to Castlevania 1 and Super Castlevania 4, where he does the exact same thing. Now we'll talk about my personal favorite from Ultimate's base roster, King K. Rool. King K. Rool was given the same treatment as Bowser or Donkey Kong, where rather than being a strictly cartoony character, some of their taunts and sounds are based more on real-world animals. For example, K. Rool's up taunt. This has him snap his mouth multiple times, referencing the fact that he's designed around crocodiles. It's also very similar to a taunt that Bowser also has. Next up is side taunt, where he slaps his big ol' belly. This is meant to emphasize K. Rool's belly armor passive that he utilizes throughout most of his moveset, as well as in his counter. Funnily, this taunt actually activates K. Rool's super armor as well. And finally is down taunt, which has K. Rool stomp the ground. Personally, I think that both side and down taunts were inspired by Japanese sumo wrestling. Slapping your belly and stomping the ground are both things that are done in traditional sumo competitions. K. Rool's body shape probably reminded the Smash team of a sumo wrestler, and so they took that direction when it came to his taunts. Next up is the adorable Isabelle, who first debuted in Animal Crossing New Leaf. All three of her taunts come from emotes that exist in the Animal Crossing games. Up taunt is the greetings emote, side taunt is the delight emote, and the short dance she does for down taunt comes from the complete emotion in Happy Home Designer. Now from a dog we go to a cat, and we look at the wrestler cat Incineroar from Pokemon Sun and Moon. Up taunt has Incineroar point to the sky while his belt glows in a similar manner to his revenge counter move. Side taunt has Incineroar pound his chest and raise a fist, and down taunt has him kneel while holding his arms out. All of these mostly seem to be based on Incineroar's wrestler personality and the showmanship that goes along with it. I took a look through Incineroar's animations from Sun and Moon, and I didn't really see anything that I thought looked super similar, so I feel like it just being Smash Original is a pretty safe bet. And that finished up all of the uniquely numbered fighters in Smash Ultimate, but now we get to talk about the Echo Fighters who debuted in Ultimate. I'm going to present them in the order that they are on the character select screen, which means we'll start with Dark Samus. Dark Samus's first two taunts sort of just emphasize her evil Phazon monster personality. She floats up and spins around just like she does in her typical moveset, and she sort of glows with evil monster energy. Down taunt, however, could be an interesting reference. Dark Samus kneels on the ground and holds her arm cannon upward in a sort of ready position. While Samus strikes a similar pose in her taunt for melee, the kneeling part makes this most likely a reference to Metroid 2 Return of Samus for the Game Boy. Next we'll move on to the very first Echo Fighter revealed for Ultimate, which is Daisy. Daisy's up taunt is exactly her official Smash render, but both of these are probably based on original artwork that was made for Mario Tennis for the N64. It's just sort of been adjusted for modern day Daisy because that Daisy looks very different. Side taunt has her spin around and hold up a peace sign, which is Smash original, but it matches Daisy's personality perfectly. And down taunt has her place her hands on her hips. This comes from official artwork of Daisy that's been used in several places, including her Super Mario amiibo, but which first debuted in Mario Kart 7. Following that is Chrom. Like his daughter Lucina, Chrom's up taunt is a 3D pose based on his official art from Fire Emblem Awakening. For side taunt, he holds out his sword in a ready up pose. I couldn't really find any reference for this, so unless I get new information, I'm just going to label this one a Smash original. And lastly, Chrom's down taunt has him twirl his sword, and while the exact animation isn't the same, the style and energy definitely kinda match his victory animation from Fire Emblem Awakening. Ken is far more straightforward than most of the other characters on this list. Coming from another fighting game series with its own set of animations, the Smash team could pretty much just snag the ones from his games that they liked and remake them for Smash. His up taunt is the very epic Thumbs Up Ken, which references Ken's win pose from Street Fighter Alpha. It also happens to confirm any and all true and 100% real leaks. Side taunt is very much meant to match Ryu's, perhaps to emphasize the fact that Ken is Ryu's Echo Fighter, which was a point that they touched on very heavily during his introduction in the final Smash Ultimate Direct. And lastly is down taunt, which is one of Ken's taunts from Street Fighter 4, as well as his intro at the start of a brand new match. And last but not least is Richter, who debuted in Castlevania Rondo of Blood, also known as Castlevania Dracula X. Richter's up taunt is a direct recreation of Richter's pose from Rondo of Blood's box art. His side taunt is based on art that can be found in the official Rondo of Blood guidebook. And lastly is his down taunt, which is based on a cutscene found in Rondo of Blood. Piranha Plant's up taunt has it go very rigid and move up and down, a clear reference to their first appearance in Super Mario Bros. For the NES. They've since become far more animated, moving in a variety of ways in the later Mario games, but this is the way that they behaved in their very first debut. Side taunt is a Smash original, kind of similar to Bowser and K. Rool's taunts, which is just meant to emphasize the big mouth and the sharp teeth that a Piranha Plant has. And lastly is down taunt, where Piranha Plant spins around and strikes a pose. I personally think that this is a Smash original, but I suppose that you could make an argument that says that this taunt is based on old art of Piranha Plant. I'm honestly not 100% sure. Next, we'll move on to the first official Fighter Pass fighter, fighter number 71, Joker from Persona 5. First, let's look at up taunt, where Joker strikes a pose pulling at his glove. This is a well-known pose and is used multiple times in Smash, including Joker's final Smash, because it comes from the pose that Joker strikes at the end of an all-out attack in Persona 5. During this taunt, Morgana appears, saying,
"Looking cool, Joker!"
Morgana is one of the party members available in Persona 5, and the line he says is a potential voice clip used during battles. And yes, it's become quite the meme. Side taunt has Joker point his gun forward while holding his knife underneath. This pose seems to be Smash original, and it simply shows off Joker's two main weapons in his moveset. Morgana again appears, laughing while his eyes turn starry. Morgana's eyes can turn starry throughout Persona 5 as one of the potential headshots used for the game's dialogue boxes. And lastly is down taunt, where Joker strikes a pose facing away from the camera while Morgana hops up in the air. This pose is very similar to art that was made for Joker's appearance in Catherine Full Body, another Atlas game. Even though Catherine Full Body was not released until after Joker was released in Smash, the game itself was announced before Joker's announcement for Smash. So it isn't too much of a stretch to say that Sakurai could have seen this art during any of his consults with Atlas and decided to use it as the basis for one of his taunts. Unique to Joker is Arsene, who can potentially be out at any time during a match and who has his own animation for when Joker taunts. Arsene strikes the exact same pose from his official Persona 5 art. Unfortunately, regardless of taunt, Arsene only does this single animation, but I think it's cool nonetheless. Next, let's talk Hero, the 4-way character representing the Dragon Quest franchise. While there are 4 different models on this slot, the taunts all remain exactly the same, so even though I'm only showing the default costume, everything applies across the board. Hero's up taunt has him surround himself with a pink aura before it ultimately bursts. This is the original animation for Psych Up, which first debuted in Dragon Quest VIII Journey of the Cursed King. Psych Up is an ability that increases tension, which is a mechanic that allows for multiplied damage during battles. Psych Up is also used in Hero's moveset, but it uses a totally different animation. Side Taunt has the hero hold his given sword straight up over his head. This happens multiple times throughout Dragon Quest XI, and it's kind of just a trope for sword users in general. And lastly is Down Taunt, where Hero sort of stumbles backwards while a slime hops by. The slime is the mascot of the Dragon Quest series, because while everything changes from game to game, the enemies and such remain the same for the most part, and the slime became a fan favorite that eventually turned into the mascot. While this animation doesn't necessarily have a link to something specific, I think that it could potentially be a reference to how Dragon Quests 1 through 8 had random monster encounters, as the slime suddenly appears and the hero looks very shocked about it. Dragon Quest IX and onward implemented, for the most part, monster battles that are encountered by seeing the monster in the overworld. Next up is Banjo and his best pal Kazooie. Starting off is Up Taunt, which I believe is the only actual reference to Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts in this entire character. Banjo stretches upward while Kazooie sticks her head outward. This is based on an idle animation from Nuts and Bolts on the Xbox 360. Next up is Side Taunt, where they strike a pose with Banjo going to one side and Kazooie going to the other while they both look at each other. Smash definitely took its liberties with this one because this exact animation never really happens in any of the Banjo games, but it's based on the pose that both Banjo and Kazooie hit in the very beginning of the opening sequence of the first game. Lastly is Down Taunt, where Banjo bows twice while doing his iconic This comes from Banjo-Kazooie in 2 different places. The first is when Banjo and Kazooie collect all 10 Jiggies in a given world, and the second is when they open up a note door inside of Grunty's lair. Next, let's move on to Terry. Just like the Street Fighter reps, Terry's taunts and animations both come largely from his long library of games. We'll start with his well-known
Hey, come on!
Where he gestures with his finger, which is based on his intro pose and taunt from Fatal Fury 2 and King of Fighters 94. Side Taunt sees him stand up straight and taunt with his hand, and is based on his victory pose from Garou, Mark of the Wolves, though Terry has a very different design in that game. Lastly is Down Taunt, where Terry takes off his hat and spins it on his finger, which is based on the match start animation from both Fatal Fury 3 Road to the Final Victory and Real Bout Fatal Fury. Not much more to say there, it's pretty straight to the point on all of those references. And last but not least is Byleth from Fire Emblem 3 Houses. For Byleth's up taunt, they sweep their sword before putting their fist to their chest. This comes from the victory animation used by Byleth in 3 Houses. It also serves as one of Byleth's victory screens in Smash Ultimate. For Side Taunt, Byleth holds the Sword of the Creator out. The animation itself is original to Smash as far as I can tell, but the 2 potential quotes both have references.
Let the lesson begin!
Is Byleth's critical hit quote, while
Stay focused
is when Byleth is selected on the battlefield. And lastly is Down Taunt, where Byleth whips the sword around their body, which for the most part I can only conclude is Smash original. For her up taunt, Min Min spins while performing 2 kicks, ending by striking a pose all while shouting out in Chinese. This taunt is taken from one of Min Min's victory animations from ARMS, and also doubles as a victory animation in Smash as well. The pose that she strikes at the end of the taunt matches the pose that is used in Min Min's official artwork for ARMS, which is also the artwork that's used for her fighter spirit. Min Min's side taunt sees her perform some Tai Chi movements with her arms before striking a pose, commonly known as the crane stance, which is incredibly common in Chinese martial arts. This pose is also one that she hits in her official render for arms, which is also used as her non-fighter spirit from Ultimate's base game. This pose being inspired by Chinese martial arts lines up with Min Min being of Chinese descent. She also just says the word ramen during this taunt, which is an odd thing to say in the middle of a fight. Min Min's down taunt sees her swing her arms around before she finally strikes another pose. While her arms are kinda doing their own thing, her feet match up with the swallow pose, which is another common pose found in Chinese martial arts. Steve's up taunt sees him jump twice while his arms move. This taunt was inspired by a common greeting in Minecraft, where players will sometimes jump up and swing their arm as a means of communicating. The hand movement in the actual game is a punch, but when it's done without holding anything in that hand, it kinda looks like the player is waving. For his side taunt, Steve pulls out a steak and eats it. In Minecraft, food is essential to keep your hunger up and thus your health up, so players will often eat food in moments of peace in order to bring their health back up. Likewise, a player might do this taunt during a moment of peace in a match. There is a gigantic list of consumable items in Minecraft, but Smash keeps it simple with just having Steve eat a steak, using one of the most common food items that can be found in the game. But fortunately, it doesn't heal you at all in Smash, which is a good thing because Steve really doesn't need another advantage over other players. Lastly is his down taunt, which sees Steve crouch 3 times while looking towards the camera. Crouching in Minecraft is known as sneaking, which has the player walk slower, lowers the sound of their footsteps, and prevents them from falling off of blocks. But you can spam this, resulting in something similar to the taunt that we've seen here in Smash. While Sakurai said this taunt is something of a greeting in Minecraft, I think we all know that it's actually a teabag, which is meant to be a means of taunting your opponent rather than greeting them. Sephiroth's up taunt has him literally taunt the opponent, performing a gesture that beckons the enemy at him while saying "come after me" in Japanese, which seems to be largely a Smash original. It just kind of plays up on Sephiroth's personality. For his side taunt, Sephiroth poses up with the Masamune outstretched, ready for a fight. This is based off of Sephiroth's battle pose from Final Fantasy VII, which is found in a couple of places, like when he was a temporary party member and in the final battle against Cloud. This pose is known as the Kasumi no Kamae, a stance used in Kendo, which is a Japanese martial art that focuses on the sword, with Kendo literally translating to the way of the sword. This taunt is also the inspiration for the render of Sephiroth's alternate costume, which is also kind of tied back to the final battle against Cloud, but the render has of course been significantly adjusted for the sake of space because his sword is comically huge. And finally, Sephiroth's down taunt has him turn more towards the camera while darkness surrounds him. This pose could be seen as similar to the pose that Sephiroth strikes in the scene after he destroys Nibelheim in Final Fantasy VII, while the darkness is just kind of a general reference to the darkness that Sephiroth is often associated with. Pyra's up taunt has her turn away from the camera and wave while Rex teleports in behind her, yelling out, "Go Pyra." This taunt was simply another way to include Rex in the moveset wherever possible, so the origin is fairly Smash original. However, the animation that Rex does is similar to his animation when performing a Blade special in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. For her side taunt, Pyra leans forward and sparks a small fire in her hand, while saying, "You'll get burned." This animation is performed during a cutscene in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and also serves as one of her idle animations. And lastly, for her down taunt, Pyra poses with the Aegis sword while fire surrounds her and she lets out a battle cry, which is a Smash original taunt. Mithra's up taunt is similar to Pyra's, where Rex appears to cheer Mithra on while Mithra waves to him. Rex will instead shout, "Come on Mithra," but the animation holds the same reference as Pyra's. For her side taunt, Mithra holds out her arm while a burst of light pops from her fingers and she says, "Prepare yourself." The animation itself is meant to mirror Pyra's side taunt with the fire, with light being the element that Mithra is capable of wielding. Meanwhile, the quote that she says is one of the random quotes that she can say while using Photon Edge in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Finally, Mithra's down taunt sees her turn away from the camera and strike a pose, with wind blowing through her hair and clothing while saying, "Think you could take me?" This pose is a Smash original, just meant to give her a cool stance that matches up with her personality fairly well. However, in English, the quote that she says could actually be based on a fairly popular running joke for Xenoblade Chronicles 2 fans. Early versions of the game had voice lines for the Ardanian soldiers that would overwhelm the player, being a bug of sorts that would allow many voice lines to all stack on top of each other.
Think you can take me! Don't forget me! Think you can take me!
One of these lines from the soldiers was, "Think you can take me." So I like to think that this is actually a reference to that bug, which became incredibly popular online. I'm unsure if this reference holds up in Japanese, where Mithra instead says, "I'll show you my true power," but for English, that's what I think the reference is. Kazuya's up taunt has him cross his arms and grin towards the opponent, which is something that Kazuya just kinda likes to do, being the edgy boy that he is. He's seen doing this in various artwork, and it was even touched upon in his Smash reveal trailer as well. For his side taunt, Kazuya performs the Demon's Wrath. This was a combo introduced in the Tekken series in Tekken 4, and ordinarily requires a 4-button input in order to pull it off. However, for Smash, Sakurai wanted to include it and felt that inclusion as a taunt was a nice middle ground. It's only one of a handful of taunts in the game that can actually deal damage and KO. Lastly is Kazuya's down taunt, where he sort of charges up before briefly transforming into his devil form and roaring before going back to his normal appearance. This transformation appears a number of times throughout the Tekken series, from a pure transformation such as in Tekken 7, to a transformation through the form of a tag out in Tekken Tag Tournament. And last but not least, we have Sora. Sora's up taunt is unique in that it has 3 different animations that cycle. Sora will cast 3 spells: Stopka, Eroga, and Curaga. In the Kingdom Hearts series, Stopka will freeze opponents in time, and Curaga will obviously heal. Eroga has had 2 effects throughout the series, either shielding the opponent by surrounding them with air, or using air as an offensive attack to whirlwind opponents. All of these taunts are purely cosmetic, however, having no function on any players. For his side taunt, Sora spins his Keyblade out in front of him while grunting. This is similar to one of his possible animations for winning in a battle in Olympus Coliseum's tournament in Kingdom Hearts 1. And lastly is his down taunt, where he jumps up while raising a fist in the air and shouting, "Here we go." Sora most recently does this animation in Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory when successfully hitting star mark notes in a song. This pose is also used for a render of Sora created specifically for Melody of Memory.